a lifetime of sexual abuse. He molested all 3 of the boys, stabbed them both to death. I believe he snapped. There was so much the jury never got to hear. No, I don't think he should spend the rest of his life in prison. And this is why. John adopted another little boy, and immediately David felt the need to protect him. But at the same time, being just a little boy himself, part of him was kind of relieved that he would get a break from the abuse while someone else was being abused. And that only made him build up guilt and shame inside of himself. One of David's friends spoke out years later and said that he had slept over David's house one time. And he remembers John pulling David into John's bedroom in the middle of the night. And he was terrified when he heard David say, "Dad, it doesn't fit. It's too big." From a very, very young age, David was very athletically inclined and was one of the stars of his soccer team. John recognized that David had this ability in sports, and for purposes of looking like the dad who had everything going for his children, he started coaching David's soccer team, but he pushed him a lot more so than the capabilities of a child for that age. And when David did not meet those expectations, he would beat him. John wore his class ring, and David distinctly remembers getting beat and smacked and punched in the back of the head while he had that ring on. One of the reasons that is so significant will come out later in the series, but you'll want to remember about John's class ring. As you can imagine, David grew more and more hopeless, more and more depressed, and at a certain point, he had written a suicide letter, which one of his teachers found in the classroom, and of course, she called him straight into the office and called John Barnett. It was immediately decided that David would go into an inpatient program, which was a 30-day program.
I had written a suicide note, and I had actually officially addressed it to my school counselor, and I had no intentions of actually giving it to her. I really didn't even understand why I wrote it. I think that was the beginning parts of my life where I actually started writing out feelings. I wanted to commit suicide, but I never had the courage, and I never wanted a witness. So I actually wrote to someone, and lo and behold, when the bell rang, I had placed this note down underneath my folders and notebooks, and when I went down to grab them and got my bag, the folder was not in a notebook, it was underneath everything, so it sat in the bottom of that stool, and I was unaware of it. I didn't look for the note, but someone came with a note to the next class, and as soon as I heard my name called, it was that dreaded feeling, okay, why am I being called downstairs? And sure enough, they walked me in the office and they had a talk with me and said, as soon as she held up the piece of paper, I knew what it was. And John was up waiting for me with a backpack. And he said, let's go. And there were no questions about it. We popped in the car and he drove me to a place I'd never been. And it was St. Anthony's Medical Center. And I got to the institution and I believe they sat me down, and I vaguely remember them questioning me. And my simple answers were, I didn't want to see tomorrow. So this became my first 30-day inpatient program.
How old were you?
And I just turned 15.
Did they know that John was sexually abusing you, or did you not tell them?
At this time, they didn't, because it was just my first day. Throughout like the next, maybe the first week or two, things started becoming evident. I was telling them during my private one-on-one sessions, I found some emotional stability, and they put me on medication because I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, dissociative disorder. I'm hypervigilant and suicidal tendencies. I needed help, and it was the first place in my life where I believe I was with people who wanted to help.
How did you feel when you left and they sent you back home to John?
when I got news that I was going to be leaving in the next couple days, it was that sudden. I was floored. I was not ready to go back to John. And my whole intention of going through this was hoping that someone outside of the Webster Groves Police Department or the Missouri Division of Family Services once again would be like, hey, something's going on here. This isn't right. And sure enough, I guess they decided that I was going back to John's house. And DFS obviously stepped in and did absolutely nothing about it.
After returning back home to John, David became extremely suicidal again, and he wound up back in treatment for a 60-day program. When John picked him up the second time, he wouldn't speak to him. He didn't speak to him the entire car ride home.
So the morning that I got out, John, they took me through the corridor. I went down the stairs, or through the elevator. When I came out, John was standing there. I hadn't been outside in 60 days, and the sun was like a whole new, awakening. And John didn't look disappointed, and John didn't look very happy to see me either. He didn't say one word all the way out to the car. The nurse gave him my slips and my meds and said, there is his refills, just have a doctor give him prescription. And we went out to the car. He didn't say one word to me all the way home. I got home. I immediately went to get on the phone, called some friends.
David told John that they needed to fill his antidepressant medication prescription, to which John told him he would not be filling any prescriptions for him. He would not be taking any medication, and that he basically had wasted enough money already on the hospital stay.
I went through my medication. I took the meds that I had for like 2 days, and I asked him once again, hey, where's my prescription? And he said, you don't need meds. I don't believe you're not getting anything. You don't need it. So I woke up 2 days off of meds. I woke up, and I don't even remember having a dreaded feeling. Nothing. I just simply, like I knew what I was doing, got dressed, got the gas can out of the garage, walked up to 7-Eleven, put about $1 or $2 worth of gas in it, and came back and poured it all over myself sitting out on the side yard next to the garage. And probably what was only a couple minutes seemed like a couple hours, and I decided not to do it. And the next thing you know, I pulled out my Camel Wides and my Zippo, and I heard the flicking of a wet wheel, or of a wheel, and and then I came to and I was patting myself out on the ground. I was on fire.
Subscribe to Crime 411 on YouTube and follow the David Barnett series for upcoming episodes.